All right, warmly welcome to this press conference. We have met over 2 days now, meeting in the format of the Nordic and the Nordic-Baltic countries. As you might know, Sweden is now sharing the Nordefco cooperation. We meet at a unique time for our cooperation. For the first time ever, all the Baltic countries and all the Nordic countries are going to be having the same kind of security arrangements, both in peace, in crisis, and in wartime. Due to, of course, to Finland having joined NATO on the 4th of April and Sweden being on the verge of joining NATO, which is going to create even better conditions for us to cooperate. We can take note of the fact that we share many interests and many values, and we have a unity of purpose when it comes to supporting Ukraine. We had good discussions about our unwavering support for Ukraine and also how we can collaborate in order to intensify and support the Ukrainians even further. We also had good discussions in regard to the transatlantic link and the possibilities of deepening our cooperations also when it comes to the transatlantic link, being greatly helpful, of course, by Norway already having a defense cooperation agreement since 2022, and then Sweden, Denmark and Finland now being at a similar stage where we have finished negotiations on DCAs and are about to signing it as well. We also had discussions in regard to the protection of critical infrastructure, especially under the water. That's of course an issue that we've been collaborating and discussing recently as well, due to the events that happened both with Nord Stream and the incident in regard to the cables and the gas pipelines as well. So it has been good and productive discussions in regard to how we can strengthen Nordic and Nordic-Baltic cooperation at the historical time. Let me also say that we already during our meeting in Reykjavik in June with our Nordefco meeting also worked on something called Nordefco 2030, a new vision for our cooperation based on all the Nordics being part of NATO, and we of course have a Nordic defense concept that's going to be further developed. In March next year, of course, we're going to have a Nordic Resolve, which is going to be a big exercise where we can also test our deepened Nordic defense cooperation, all being done to support and complement the work that's being done inside NATO. So good and productive days here in Stockholm in the Nordic and Nordic-Baltic format at the historic junction for our security and our common endeavor. So please, anyone?
Yes, thank you to the Minister and thank you to Sweden as well for hospitality. I think as the Minister already said, so we had I would say excellent, open and productive discussions on what we can do together among like-minded community, among like-minded allies. Of course, security of our nations, defense of our nations is a top priority. And here we can do many things, of course, within NATO, strengthening transatlantic links, implementing regional planning as well. But at the same time, there are still the activities, what we can do also on a regional level among ourselves. And support for Ukraine has been high on the agenda, and there is a sustained commitment that we continue support for Ukraine, realizing that, of course, it is a challenging times as well. Last but not least, we should do our national homeworks as well, implementing those plans, also the investing in defense industry and defense capabilities. At the very end, it is also about political leadership and societal engagement that actually defense is top priority for us in these challenging times. So that's why also the national homework should be done as well. Thank you.
Yeah, well, it's good to be here, dear friend, and it's good to be always in Sweden and in Stockholm. So first of all, just a couple of additional remarks. Paul already mentioned the cable and gas pipeline incident. I gave an overview to our colleagues, and yes, the investigation is still ongoing. We have joint investigation team together with Finland, and for sure we can say that all these incidents are linked. We have mapped and filmed the seabed. We are collecting the information, and at the moment we are waiting for the cooperation from the Chinese authorities because we need to get the access to the boat, or to the vessel, sorry. We hope to get this cooperation ongoing in coming weeks. So let's hope that it's possible. Although I'm not so sure how much added value we will get from this, but anyway, it has to be done, and let's see. And then we can draw some conclusions from this investigation. And of course, what is very important for me is a regional cooperation, and these kind of meetings gives us the opportunity to coordinate also the messages and our positions in various institutions like European Union or NATO, and Sweden being member very soon. Then definitely we need this cooperation, and we all understand that when Sweden will join and Finland is already a member of NATO, then only from geographical point of view, NATO is so much bigger that we need to coordinate very closely our work, what we are doing in defense. And this defense cooperation means that, you know, the Baltic Sea region is one operational area basically for defense, but we also face many challenges. We have High North, and we have Baltic Sea region. So there are many things what have to be coordinated, and this is why these kind of gatherings are extremely important. And nevertheless, last but not least, NATO summit is coming. It's not so far away anymore. So in July in Washington, the 75th anniversary summit of NATO will be held. And it's also it was a possibility today to coordinate also a bit these messages, what we probably will discuss during the Washington summit. So for sure Ukraine will be in the agenda, and also the questions of NATO, because still the regional plans have to be implemented. And they have to be ready to implement. Because I hope that we never have to actually implement these regional plans. But nevertheless, the message of deterrence and the future of NATO, these are the topics which will be probably in the agenda of the NATO summit. So, but many other topics we discussed today. I'm very happy that Paul hosted us, and this cooperation we have is very, very good. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. Always good to be in Stockholm. And in times of uncertainty and unpredictability, it's good to have friends and allies. And we see so much new opportunities in strengthening in our common defense when we are all 5 Nordic countries and the 3 Baltic countries together in NATO, in our common defense alliance. When it comes to planning, to how we operate, how we procure, how we exercise together. And as Paul mentioned, we have this Nordic response exercise coming up in Mars. Will be an important exercise in how we reinforce our region and how we operate across the borders in our region. So we see a lot of opportunities, and also, as mentioned, we are discussing how we continue our common effort to support Ukraine in the long term as well.
Yes, finally, let me just say that, of course, Lithuania, Finland, Denmark, and Iceland was also represented at the meeting, but some representatives have to go back earlier, and some of the ministers also had domestic political handlings to do in their national parliament as well. So then you know why not all of us are represented here in the press briefing. But Johan, I think we'll be glad to take a few questions.
All right, then we'll open up for questions. Oh, there, thank you.
So, in which ways need the countries here to develop the ways to cooperate when it comes to countering hybrid operations?
Well, that was actually some of the things that we're discussing quite explicitly during today's briefing, both in regards to the importance to protect critical infrastructure on the seabed, but also in regards to militarization when it comes also to migration. And I think one of the conclusions we draw is that this is very important to coordinate domestically your interagency cooperation between, there's a lot of agencies involved. We also state that this is a matter also that you need to show, you have to make sure that you know what kind of legal framework you're operating. And then, of course, we have various international organizations that we work on. We work when it comes to hybrid threats inside the EU, especially when it comes to protection of critical infrastructure, but we also work inside NATO, and especially some of the more maritime aspects also that could be connected to protection of critical infrastructure on the seabed. We also use the JEF, and Joint Expeditionary Force. So it's a coordination at home, a whole of government approach, again, sorting out the legal framework, and strong international coordination, I would say. There will be a few. I don't know if anyone else.
Well, I can just add a couple of comments. That first is deterrence. That that we have to be credible in our deterrence. That we have to show that yes, we have all these measures, what also Paul already mentioned, that they are there, and there is a cooperation. So it's not like that 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 you can think that one country is doing something and the other one is not doing. Secondly, information sharing. Information sharing means that something we can see. Also from the public sources, something what we gather by our intelligence. So we need to share this information in order to protect our people and our Baltic Sea. And thirdly, of course, if there happens something, then also very good and close cooperation in investigation. So that case showed us very clearly that cooperation between Estonia, Finland and Sweden was excellent, not only, and which is still ongoing, but also when we needed some assets, then these assets were there, and this cooperation was there. But of course, that every incident teaches us something. So, and this is also something we have to keep in mind, that we have to learn from this, and we also have to see what are open. And we are living, or we were living long time in a like peace time, and we didn't consider that there could be a problem with the connections between the countries. Today we see that, and then you just imagine what happens when the cables between Norway and UK, or from the Europe to United States, these connections will be somehow manipulated. So then we can see huge impact to our economies, and this is why the critical infrastructure is on so high topic also inside of NATO as an alliance.
Yes, if I can just shortly add, absolutely what we see, what we experience, it is a hybrid activities, if not a hybrid warfare, basically by our neighbor. And we see in several domains, of course, incidents against critical infrastructure, cyber attacks, and also weaponization of illegal migration. So that way it also shows that once we develop our own defense capabilities, it is actually, I would say, 360% degree of, let's say, defense capabilities. It's not just about conventional ones, but we should exactly be ready to protect different segments of our societal and economic life. And of course, it is not always easy. It is challenging, especially if we speak about a sea underwater critical infrastructure. But that's why once more monitoring, information sharing, intelligence sharing, also the prevention and coordinating is extremely important among nations. So it becomes much more important to have these inter-regional, international efforts in this regard.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yes, my question is about these unusual activities along the Finnish-Russian border in recent days. The Finnish Prime Minister has said this is a threat to national security and also asked Frontex for support. Do you share this view that this is a threat to security, also to the Nordic and Baltic countries and NATO?
Well, we've certainly seen these incidents before in 2015 that Russia engaged in similar activities, and I think Frontex can play an important role. I also think that Europol can play an important role in this regard as well. And I think one of the values of venues like this, that we can share situational awareness and share our reading about risks and vulnerabilities in this rather unique format. So it's one of the things that we were discussing today.
I can for sure say that it is a threat to national security. Just imagine that, and Paul is definitely right that we saw that already in 2015. So in 1 week, that time, if I remember correctly, I was that time Minister of Interior in Estonia. So we saw around 10,000 migrants flowing towards Finland. So now we see something similar, but it's winter time. So, obviously you have to be very, very careful here, because when you have hundreds, maybe even thousands of people trying to enter to your country and claiming that they are seeking for asylum, it's not that, because we all have to understand that in Russia there is a border zone which is controlled fully by FSB, up to 10 kilometers. To enter to that zone you need a state permission. So that means that all these people are there on state permission. So, and to be honest, when we talk about the real threats, we never know who are these people, because in these quantities we cannot control them immediately. Are there any agents from FSB also involved? So obviously we all take this as a national threat, and this is why I believe these actions conducted at the moment by Finland, that they are closing all the border crossing points except one, are very right ones, and of course we support them in all these actions, and if needed also with other help.
If I may add, of course some nations experienced already such kind of weaponization of illegal migration in the past. Latvia, Lithuania, Poland have been experiencing, let us say, the attacks, I would say, for 2-3 years already. And actually the numbers are quite large ones, but it is on the Latvian, Belarusian, Lithuanian, Belarusian, Polish, Belarusian border. So now we can see that actually the front line or the external borders of NATO and EU have been attacked on different segments. And of course it once more underlines how important it is to coordinate our activities, the countries being on the front line. And of course also it once more underlines how important it is to protect also with infrastructure, the borders as such physically, because now we see that, of course, migration is being also absolutely weaponized by our neighbor.
I forgot very small comment before Björn can say about the bicycles also on the Norwegian border many years back, but weaponization of the information. So what we see at the moment and what we saw yesterday, that Russia is already putting some cameras close to the border crossing points, and they are using this also as an information warfare. So and this is why your job is extremely important, to explain to our population how they are conducting this kind of hybrid warfare. Because once again, this is not normal behavior that you have Somalis or Yemenis up in north in Finland seeking for asylum. So we all understand that.
Yeah, I would just add that I think it's very useful to share information about the border situation. We also have a border with Russia, and the last couple of years, the activity, the border crossings have been very reduced, but it's still open. We haven't so far seen any unusual activity, but we are, of course, following this very closely, and is also prepared to take further measures if necessary, even closing it if that is necessary, but we are not there yet. But we also experienced in 2015 that suddenly there came a lot on crossing the border and bicycles, actually. You're right about that. But so we have to follow this very closely, and we see how this is used, and then it's very helpful to coordinate and to share information.
We stay in close bilateral contacts, all of us, with Finland as well, and we know that Finland has taken both physical measures in regarding to establish fences, but they also taken legal frameworks as well. That I think Finland is well prepared as well to handle this.
Thank you. Moving on to the next question. Please use the microphone.
Yes, thank you. Have you seen a change in the way the Russian Navy is behaving in the Baltic Sea the past weeks, months? Or what do you expect from that?
Well, what we can say in regard to the Russian military capabilities are, of course, that their ground forces now are severely bogged down in predominantly eastern Ukraine, and that, of course, affects their defense posture also in our region. But when we assess their air force capabilities and their naval assets, they are pretty much intact. Also in the Baltic Sea Fleet has not been as affected by the war as for example their naval infantry and their ground forces as well, and they have undertaken substantial military exercises during this fall as well. So we follow and monitoring the situation very closely. We feel also we greatly appreciate there's a strong international presence now on the Baltic Sea, not at least by the United States and United Kingdom and the Netherlands, and we exercise in a way with them much more extensively than we did a couple of years ago.
And probably what is quite obvious that as there is Kaliningrad, so then there is a heavy traffic between Kaliningrad and St. Petersburg for obvious reasons. They are also conducting mobilization in Kaliningrad, which means that all these people and assets what they have in Kaliningrad have to move to mainland from Russian perspective, mainland, because Kaliningrad is an island from their eyes. So yes, there is a traffic, but not like very big abnormalities. So this is all what we could predicted also previously.
All right, moving on to the next question, the woman in white.
Hello, Johanna Palmen from Kauppalehti, Finland. Finland still keeps one border station open. Should all these countries have a common policy on migration on Russian borders? And in Finland, there's also an interpretation that closing completely the border would be against some international human rights agreements. What is your interpretation on them, and are you willing to go against those agreements if necessary?
Well, first, we have very close cooperation in what we are doing, also on the European Union levels. And you remember when we spoke about the traffic and car traffic between European Union and Russia, then there was a common position of Finland, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland. So yes, we are making cooperation. Thirdly, regarding the border crossing points, I believe we should act as the situation evolves. So in Estonia, we don't have much border crossing points or so many as you have in Finland. So first, still, I believe this behavior from the Finnish authorities was very right thing to do. Because these are not asylum seekers, these are weaponized illegal migration or immigration, and this is why, you know, how the situation goes further, it's very difficult to say at the moment, but we are in close contact and we are monitoring the situation very closely.
If I may add, the goals of Russia, of course, one goal is actually to destabilize the situation and make life difficult for our societies, and of course to increase pressure. And second one is also to divide EU and NATO members in this case. So of course for us, above all, it's important to protect our borders. So that's why all measures taken, if necessary, they should be taken. At the same time, of course, extremely important is to stay unified. So in this case, absolutely, so the steps should be taken if necessary, but absolutely, sort of course, there is understanding that we should coordinate as much as possible our activities also in terms of protecting our borders.
And one more sentence, just that, you know, this is exactly why Russia is doing that. You are writing about that and not Ukraine. So they are trying to, you know, keep our focus out of Ukraine and to write about Middle East, to write about border crossing points, to discuss about is it human rights violation or not. You know, this is exactly what their agenda is, to draw away the focus from Ukraine.
I mean, we see that time and time again that Russia engaged into hybrid activities and exposes all to it. It can be disinformation, propaganda, it can be cyber attacks or cyber espionage and so forth. And I think it's really pivotal both that we do homework also on strengthening our national resilience when it comes to these kind of hybrid activities, but also that we stay in very close international coordination as well. And ideally also we have common messaging in regards to these activities.
All right, I think we have one question over there by the window.
Yes, Lucas Dahlström, Yle Finland. In what concrete way can you help Finland in this situation and help each other? I mean, Estonia have had the same problems as well.
There are concrete ways. First, if Finland needs additional help with the border guards, there is an institution for that. This is Frontex, and we are members of Frontex. So we are doing that. And also, bilaterally, of course, we share the information, what our intelligence says to us. And thirdly, of course, when there is a specific requirement or specific help required by Finns, then, of course, we will do everything to help each other. This is not a question, but at the moment, as I understand, the Finnish border guard and Finnish military are very capable of handling the situation, and you have a very strong border guard and military. Don't worry about that.
Okay, we have time for 2 more questions over here and over there.
Hi. First of all, when it comes to the Finnish border and the Estonian border and Russia, how involved is Russia, do you believe, in the entire process of helping migrants or asylum seekers get to the border, first of all? And then secondly, when it comes to NATO, obviously you're making all these plans expecting Sweden to be part of NATO, but then today Turkey have said to NATO they're not going to be ratifying Sweden in time for the next foreign ministers meeting. How do you respond to that?
Maybe Paul will start.
Should I start with the NATO questions?
One more question.
Yeah.
And the other question is, what do you see as the vulnerabilities when it comes to undersea and offshore, and what are you planning to do about it?
Well, in regards to NATO, Sweden's NATO accessions, we feel a strong endorsement, and we feel welcome from our Nordic-Baltic countries, and I want to convey my gratitude for their strong support for it as well. In line with the agreement in Vilnius, we were glad, of course, that President Erdogan handed over our accession process to the Grand National Assembly. There has been deliberations, I understand now, in the Foreign Affairs Committee, and of course that's an autonomous parliament, and of course they have to have their deliberations. But from our perspective, we are respectful of that process, but at the same time we have a sense of urgency of joining the alliance as quick as possible, which was also with as soon as possible was also the wording that was used at the Vilnius agreement, because it's important, not at least for our Nordic-Baltic cooperation, that Sweden can become a full-fledged member of the alliance, because we both can provide an increased strategic depth for the alliance once the Swedish territory is included in NATO's common defense planning, and we have assets and capabilities that we can bring to NATO as well to strengthen NATO's deterrence and defense agenda as well. So we feel welcome, and we are hopeful it's going to happen very soon.
Well, very shortly. First, regarding the migrant flow, this is fully state orchestrated. Fully. Once again, as I said, in Russia there is a border zone up to 10 kilometers. You cannot enter without the permission of FSB. So, and by accident, all these hundreds of migrants are ending up in one border crossing point in Finland with the bicycles during the winter time. Come on. Seriously? You are coming from Yemen, you are coming from Syria, you are coming from Somalia, and at the end of the day, you end up somewhere in high north in the border crossing point with Finland. And this is not state orchestrated. Not very, plausible. Secondly, regarding the critical infrastructure, of course there are vulnerabilities. We all understand that, and but we have lived in the peacetime. We've used to that we have connections with the gas pipeline, with the electricity grids, with the data connection cables. This is normal way to operate. And what I said also during today's our meeting, that I believe internationally we have to look into the International Maritime Organization regulations, because at the moment the reality is that the vessel can come out from the Suez Canal, end up in St. Petersburg, and no authority, no Finnish or Swedish or Estonian authority or Norwegian authority can board to that vessel, even if there is a threat to national security. So we cannot board because these are international waters and there is a regulation for that. So if we have a national threat to our security, then I believe we should also have some possibilities to act. At the moment, we don't. So, of course, we can do much more deterrence, we can do much more surveillance, we can do much more controlling the seabed, but at the end of the day, the vessels are the ones who are causing the damage. So there are many vulnerabilities. Of course, we have to work on that, and I believe it's clear already now. And it's not the first case. I believe also we've seen some cases in Norway many years back. So you have more connections to UK and United States. And I know that 13,000 kilometers of cables or pipelines.
Yeah, a lot. But first to the Swedish membership in NATO, it's certainly long overdue, and Sweden is absolutely more than qualified, and we would like this to happen as soon as possible. No, and I choose to be. There have been some movement, and I choose to be optimistic, and I hope we can see this happening now in the relative near future. It certainly should happen as soon as possible. And when it comes to subsea infrastructure, yeah, we have. I mean, in the North Sea alone, it's about 9,000 kilometers of gas pipelines, and in addition, there is energy cables and communication cables, and we have this infrastructure all over the seabed, really. So this, and we see that this is a vulnerability, particularly when it comes to energy, of course, when the gas supply to Europe has been shut down or reduced significantly. So we have been monitoring this closely above the sea level. Also with help from allies. That's been important, but also making sure that this infrastructure that is there is protected. That we are not. There haven't been any attempts to sabotage it in any way, and in that regard, we have a very important experience, namely that the companies, the industry themselves, are very important actors here. They know their infrastructure best. Most of this is privately owned or managed, and so making sure that we have a very good government-civilian cooperation in monitoring and protecting this infrastructure is. I think we can't do it without making this cooperation a reality. That's we have been working a lot over this last year.
Just to add also from Latvian perspective, of course, absolutely there is consensus around the table that Sweden should be NATO member as soon as possible, and Sweden will be shortly the member of the NATO. As for the illegal migration or weaponization of illegal migration, clearly there is one architect, if not to say puppet master, it's Mr. Putin. Namely, what we see on a Russian-Finnish border, what we see on a Russian-Estonian border, but what I would add, we see also on a Belarusian-Latvian border, Belarusian-Polish border, Belarusian-Lithuanian border. Clearly there is Russia behind it, weaponizing illegal migration, so we can clearly see also the flows of the migrants and how it actually being orchestrated and coordinated. That's why, of course, once more, unified approach is extremely important. There's no, any doubt who is behind it. As for the critical infrastructure, I think already indicated by my colleagues, yes, it is a certain vulnerability. It once more underlines that interdependent open societies had their challenges. And in this regard, of course, already things being mentioned before, all the coordination within the states, within the countries, and also among the states is extremely important. Yes, of course, military can play some role in protecting the critical infrastructure, especially in territorial waters, but of course it becomes a bit more complicated when it comes to international waters. That's why also international format certainly should be here also involved, engaged, and of course also the presence of NATO is extremely important, that we show that we are credible in the region, we are willing to protect our critical infrastructure.
Sure, and in regard to the Baltic Connector, what typically happened a few days after was also that SACEUR, the highest commander inside NATO chose to also move some of NATO's naval assets into the region. I think it was some mine-clearing missiles and some autonomous systems as well. I think that was a good and reassuring signal for us as well. So.
Thank you. And we're running out of time. I have time for one final question. You in the middle there. Wait for the microphone, please.
Thank you. Can you just be more specific about the kind of continuing help for Ukraine? Did you take new decision about new weapons? Thank you.
Well, we didn't make any new decisions as such. What actually happened was that we all attended the Ukraine Defence Contact Group together, which is of course shared by Secretary Austin as well. So I think, but then we discussed on how we can further collaborate, and we already do in common projects. For example, Sweden, Norway, and Iceland are working in Lithuania on the trainer on demining and mine clearance. I know that of course Norway and Denmark are very active in the F-16 coalition, which we are engaged to as well. Sweden and Finland has cooperated on providing the possibility for Finland to increase their donations in various packages. So there is a very extensive Nordic and Nordic-Baltic collaboration on these matters as well. Now I think that our support for Ukraine is further evolving and developing due to the increased need, of course, of the Ukrainians as well. In the beginning of the war, we sent easier, lighter weapons, and now we send advanced platforms. That means that we also have to make sure that we find good logistic solutions for maintenance and so forth. So I think that it's increasingly developed. Sweden has also worked very closely with the Ukrainian counterparts on strengthening their procurement processes and providing them with good framework agreement on getting access to our defense industrial base, so they don't end up last when they want to procure defense material. I think Sweden, Norway, and Denmark recently also presented a joint procurement of ammunition, artillery ammunition, for about 60 million euros that we are procuring jointly together for the Ukrainians. That's also when we go together and do these joint procurements, then we can place larger orders, and then we can get easier access to the defense industrial base, which is under heavy pressure now.
And it expanded for this Denmark, Swedish, Norwegian initiative on artillery ammunition. It expanded the production capacity. So now we have it. We can donate and do even more in the future.
Yeah, if I may, absolutely. I think there was a strong consensus among the table that, of course, we should continuously support Ukraine, that it is a state effort. Ukraine is fighting our war. Ukraine is fighting the war for rules-based order, so that's why, of course, for us, as I would say, small and medium-sized nations, it's extremely important to support Ukraine. I think there is absolutely consensus among the partners. And of course, if you look specifically to the segments, what we can do, yes, it's about continuous support on providing nations of hardware. We realize that it's also connected and related to increasing and expanding military industry also in Europe, that we should also increase our capabilities to defend ourselves, to deter the aggressors, but at the same time, of course, continuously support Ukraine. Then it's also about training. Yes, there is European mission, but not only, so bilateral and multilateral formats, and training is extremely important. Yes, of course, it also evolves to train the trainers and to train already specific segments. But anyway, so of course, training as such is extremely important, and we have commitment to continue. And last but not least, yes, we see also coalitions in different segments, be it IT coalition, be it the mining coalition, be it a drone coalition. So we also establish the coalitions with our partners, how we can also deepen and expand our partnership and cooperation and support. As for Latvia, again, there is absolute strong commitment. Latvia has contributed around 1% of our GDP in terms of providing support to Ukraine, and absolutely this is unwavering in terms of strategic, political, diplomatic, and also military support to Ukraine.
Just very briefly, yes, I gave also the overview about the IT coalition we are leading with Luxembourg, but it's important to remind us that the format for the new contributions and donations is the Ramstein format. So it's the Ukraine Defence Contact Group, which was held on VTC yesterday. So today we concentrated more on that just to coordinate our own messages and what we are doing, and just also more specifically because also Estonia is continuing with the training process, and we've trained already around 1,500 Ukrainians. We've donated together with Norway, with Iceland, with Germany, also the military hospitals. You know that we've surpassed already 1% of our GDP regarding the military aid. But this is it's even not important that specifically is Latvia and Estonia doing over 1%, or Sweden and Norway in absolute terms are doing magnificent work helping Ukraine. It's more important at the moment actually to think about the long-term perspective, that we need to be ready to set in place the long-term goal. And in general, we have given help around 0.25% of our common GDP. So it's more important to think today, as we are entering to the new winter time, as we are entering to the new year, that what will be our long-term strategy helping Ukraine, because this is definitely what Ukraine needs in order to keep fighting.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good.